We have to like we need to get more information on these numbers.
We got this from that Governor's Council on Sustainability, and this came from them, so we'll have to dig deeper into how they pull this, analyze this resources. So, yeah, we don't have monitors, we don't have air quality monitors, we're not tracking this ourselves in Coconino County. We don't have an air quality division at the county. So, yeah, the sources that they're using for this are,
This probably gave us some really.
Oh, is it again? So we'll get that document and share that with. Anybody else have any questions on this chart? It was eye-opening, I think, to all of us to look at. Maybe not surprising, but still interesting to see what they're coming up with.
Well, the average commute of Coconino County is pretty significant. I can't remember the average commute.
Agreed.
And I think that's a large part of it. We have to recognize how, given how large the county is and the distances people are traveling, that in and of itself is just, the size of the county is going to contribute to that. I think one thing to note, though, that overall emissions from Coconino County are small in comparison to other communities in the state. So when you think about what's happening down in the valley, the emissions are much higher. So disproportionately, it's not as great, but.
And we have that first just 2.7% total emissions. Coconino County represents 2.7% of the emissions.
So you guys remember to speak up to the mics.
Do you have a per capita number? I'm just curious what the per capita is.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. I'm glad this is of interest because we were able to get new sources this time, as well as with food and agriculture, because food security, food deserts is a real health issue for people now, being able to get access to fresh food, healthy food. And we were able to, well, you guys can talk about this, but there was a recent community food systems assessment report that kind of shows these red markers show where farming markets are, and they're not widespread throughout the county. So, this food assessment report, we're not going to repeat all the findings of all these different reports. They'll be linked, they're linked in the plan, but we're touching on some of the key points that they're making. So again, stop me at any point when you have a question or a clarification. So energy infrastructure, efficiency, reliability, and renewable energy. Again, energy is a required section of this plan, and the statute specifically directs counties to talk about energy use that encourages and provides incentives for efficient use of energy and identifies policies for greater use of renewable energy. So we talk a little bit more, we talk more broadly than just policies to encourage efficient use of renewable energy. NINA was able to actually do some analysis on our current energy usage. And that's what these charts show. There's and I'll let NINA talk about this a bit more, but there's the National Renewable Energy Lab has some online sources called the SLOPE, SLOPE tool. And you can do scenario planning, you can pull this information, and that's where it came from. You want to explain this a bit more?
It's
pretty straightforward.
Summarized.
And again, this is from the National Renewable Energy Lab. The use, counties, energy use by sector, again, this is 66% is for transportation. So again, that's complementing what the governor's resiliency Sustainability Resiliency Council's finding. This over here shows county energy use by source. Non-electricity is everything that you might think of: propane, natural gas, diesel, gasoline. So, that kind of ties into the bigger use of energy by transportation, diesel cars, gasoline cars. So this is just showing our use by sector and by source. You can see that
new data. It wasn't in the last comprehensive plan, but having access to this in-well slope tool that is for energy planning, like that's the purpose of the slope tool. So that, and it is by county, so we are able to include this information.
Yeah, hugely helpful for the county to be able to access this now. And then we did connect with APS. And so in the county, there are two electricity providers. APS provides electricity to most of the county. There's a small portion of near Fredonia, Garcane Energy, and so they're a provider for a very small portion of residents up in the northern part of the county. And you can kind of see their sources of power. They're using gas, nuclear, some coal, renewables at 13%, and then demand side management is basically efficiencies. I don't quite understand what that is, but they could consider that part of their portfolio of energy sources.
That's interesting. But it's not an energy.
So this is from
I have a problem with.
this is right with APS, but it is showing, and then we do know that they have a goal of transitioning to non-carbon sources by 2050. So this will change, but it's what we know for right now.
Just a clarification, when you speak to about this represents the county, these graphs, no, is that the entirety of the boundary of the county, or is that specific to certain areas of the county outside of like Navajo Indian Reservation and so on and so forth?
So these charts are the entire county. This one is right from APS, so this would be a little bit more than just the county because their service area goes a little bit beyond the county. I don't have the boundary of their service area. Well, we actually do.
You guys have that data?
Yeah, we have the map on that.
Who's the utility provider for Navajo tribal utilities?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Who's the energy supplier for Navajo tribal utilities?
So I
Always
believe,
right in the middle there, like the little island there with APS is.
I
And then
believe,
Navajo around it is provided by their tribal entity, but I don't know who the provider is. But where that energy is coming in from for Navajo tribal utilities.
that's a good question. That's a really good question.
Because you have some small islands within the county that APS services, and then outside of it, it's tribal utilities for Navajo.
That's his question.
That's a good question.
And question.
Aaron, you're asking who provides the electrical power to NU2A?
Yeah, and NTUA, because NTUA is then APS, but where's the energy coming in to NTUA and then going out to the homes or the sites?
Well, they have to get some out of the Glen Canyon dams to get hydroelectric.
It could
I'm
be,
sure, but also APS, the NU2A is not.
yeah, APS could be feeding into it, but
Agreed.
it's, you know, the subcontractors that would want, not direct services and islands.
We'll have to find out. That's a good point. They may be contracted with APS to get their energy and we find out. I don't know. We talked about energy efficiency and future energy needs. This is a really, these are projections for showing how the county's kind of overall energy picture will change out to 2045. And this was again from Enroll, from the slope tool. And you can see the blue is electricity, the orange is non-electricity. And over time, overall, they're projecting overall energy use to drop and then electricity use to increase. Do you want to add to that, Nina? I know this was a big lift here on this chart.
Yeah. So it gave the three different possibilities for scenarios it took, you know, in the projection. So one was just reference case, the other high building energy efficiency and widespread electrification. So I wrote in the narrative, there is, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act is out. There's this big push federally and even with different manufacturers to, you know, really go electric. And so, you know, with that, there is And even just increase fuel efficiency. So, the required miles per gallon on vehicles has gone up quite a bit. And so at least that's my understanding of why, the reference case would show despite potential growth in the area, we're still seeing a decrease in energy use. But the tool did allow, like if you had widespread electrification, like, the city of Flagstaff is really pushing for with their incentives too. If you were able to implement that, that actually is the lowest projected energy use if you were able to achieve that. And so, I don't know exactly how the model works in these, this NREL tool, but, this is what the projections are from that.
We talk a bit about land use and the connection to transportation planning and sustainability. Land use works with transportation and vice versa, and that all impacts our travel times, and then that impacts our emissions. So there's a bit on that. We talk a little bit about the energy infrastructure and how it's changed, and mainly in relation to the renewable energy projects that we're seeing come into the county. This is just a list of the renewable energy projects that we know are either online now or are approved and will be coming online soon. The total estimated production of these is 2.5 gigawatts, which is from what we've looked at, about equivalent to what the Navajo generating station was producing before it shut down. So there are potentially more projects coming in. We have some applications in for meteorologic towers, so they're kind of the test sites. This is just at this point in time what we know. And then we talk a bit about, access and affordability to, and the cost of electricity in Coconino County. It is a bit higher apparently than the national average. So we talk a bit about that. And, the energy, recognizing that the energy burden for transportation is high for people. If you work in Flagstaff, but you're commuting from Belmont or Williams, you're going to be paying more for your transportation costs. Just that's what it's going to be.
Rose has her hand up.
Go ahead, Rose.
Hi, Melissa and everybody. I just wanted to ask about the earlier information on, yes, that one. So even though we have all these in our area, are coming to fruition in our area, is there any way to find out if some of this energy is going to stay in Coconino County?
So I'll answer that as best I know. My understanding, Rose, is that all of these are connected to the grid. So it goes in and out of the county. It's not necessarily, none of these are necessarily powering a specific neighborhood, for instance, or a community. These are not a community-based solar or wind system. These are all tied directly into the main electric grid that is, throughout the entire country.
We did touch a little bit on access to electricity in the paragraphs above, I believe, and, how some residents are not able to tie into the grid because it's not available, but yeah.
Yeah, and that is something that came out in the outreach we've done. There are some communities that just can't access electricity affordably. They just don't have the power to their homes. Or in certain places like Marble Canyon, the actual infrastructure is not, there is not enough voltage power to supply energy needs to expansion projects and for additional development.
One of the things that is potentially important, because this question is a really great question. Folks ask often, if there's renewable energy being produced in Coconino County, how can we participate, in that renewable energy? And the thing is that power lines, I think what's somewhat fundamental in elementary electricity is that it's not like a hose where water comes from here and then comes out somewhere else, and that you can actually direct it. It fills the line, it just goes in it. And it's, at that point in time, it's not really renewable energy, it's just energy on the line that was produced from renewable energy. And so when people acquire the energy, they're really just buying from a portfolio, so to speak, that APS has or SRP or somebody else. And so it's a difficult question to ask if you're not really thinking in terms of electricity doesn't go here and then go here.
Right.
It just goes here and it just goes. So maybe as you develop this, there's some fundamental way to describe this, something along those lines, but it's with renewable energy and the narrative associated with it in the future. That's a real basic concept that I think is important folks appreciate.
I'm going to echo what Billy's saying. There was a period this last year where there were brownouts in Los Angeles. And I had friends over there, they're having brownouts. And so you guys haven't dealt with your electrical power generation very well. And they said, oh yeah, we have contracts, the state did, with other utilities to provide power. What happened is that they reneged on sending us the power. And I said, well, I hope you guys understand that Arizona's got this energy production here. And when it's 118 degrees in Phoenix, people like to have their thermostat set at 7. All you guys need to do is turn your thermostat to 85 and you'll have plenty of power. And they started laughing. And I said, no, I hope you know Arizona's not going to send you power if we need it here in Arizona. And that's where this power goes. It goes to the Arizona grid. And if there's power that can be sent somewhere, means the demand somewhere else, it just kind of just flows that direction. But it doesn't flow that direction if there's a demand here. So if you have surplus power going somewhere in our grid, then it'll go out down in Oliver, those bridges down Oliver to California, it goes as far as El Paso. So then it moves around, as power moves to where there's demand. I assure you, when we need the power in Arizona, it's not going to leave. It's here first, and the excess can go somewhere else. And California's having the brownouts. We didn't have it in Phoenix. It was 118 degrees.
Laura, did you have something?
Yeah, in addition to this basic background about the grid and how tied in we're not, where we are with the entire Western regional grid, I thought it might be useful early in this section to do what you did in the water chapter, where you have some background about the regulatory environment, because there are approaches to electrical power availability and reliability that we're not able to pursue in Arizona because can't pursue community choice, can't pursue microgrids, which are really, would be great solutions for some of the more rural parts of the county. So I think giving some of that regulatory background early on, and then adding a section about solutions that are not currently being pursued in Arizona, but say they're going whole hog in New Mexico in settings that are very much like the rural parts of our county, should at least be mentioned as possibilities. And then I know in goals and policies, we talked a little bit about that, but I think it deserves to be highlighted, especially in a plan that's supposedly looking out to 2045. I think you should have that described as options in this text.
Okay.
Laura, you've got a good comment. Up there at Valley, there's huge areas that do not have electric, and Miranda may want to chime in. But next there, when they brought the interconnect location in on the 500 kV line, there's so much electricity in that line, you'd think there's no big deal. Well, they can't use that power to turn on the light, even though there's all that power there. Yeah. They actually brought it from 64, ran it all the way on the 180, brought this, I call it something from Mount Lincoln over in the Miranda country, where they otherwise didn't have any power. How many miles? 8 miles?
Oh,
10 miles, 20 miles? Gee, it's a long ways.
Yeah.
And they brought, the power in so they can turn on lights at the interconnect location. That opened up that part of the country to people that otherwise have no power in their houses.
That's curious though, right? You have to run the hard wire from 12 miles away when you have it right here.
That's what I was just gonna say.
So that's the problem there, the neighbors hooking into these big power lines.
I don't know, that's something, one of those issues, access to power. I mean, this area just brought it in. Some, this house is cost prohibitive to get power. That one area, I think, opened up quite a bit. That area that Miranda's, that mostly doesn't have any infrastructure whatsoever.
Right.
And there's a lot of people out
Right, yeah, we get calls on that all the time.
there.
People understanding they've got
Or
it.
it is like,
Miranda, hey, do you want to go ahead and add to
Yeah,
that?
I do a little bit. Well, yeah, we're essentially hitting the topic of the turbines and the power and a little bit about Valley and, trying to mix the primitive with the future of technology and conveniences. And I think there is a sense that a lot of folks do move out here to live off grid and be off the grid and create their own grid and those microgrids. And, when the power lines did appear, it was a total shock. I'm going to speak very frankly. It was a shock and it kind of broke my heart a little bit because for my entire life, I was raised off the grid. We didn't see those power lines and then boom, you see power lines. And it was a shock. And, being able to communicate like the development and the future of it. And one of my biggest fears is seeing power lines all over 180. Like truly, it's like going underground would be amazing. I don't know how we could keep it essentially managed. And, with the windmills, I understand the benefit and the contribution of it, but now we see a bunch of red lights in the eastern sky. And my biggest fear is that growing and taking away from the natural beauty of what the natural landscape is. So trying to figure that balance of, a lot of us do live out there because we love the simple, primitive life. And, so just trying to find that balance.
Anything else on energy grid, renewables, power lines? So this next chart is about home heating fuel distribution. And again, this came from the annual tool. So we were able to see that a lot of homes are heated by gas. And you can see a bit of on-site solar, a fairly large number of homes in the county, over 16, almost 70% are using wood for home heating. And the and a little tiny bit on coal electricity is a 22%. So this was again something new to the plan and new piece of information to the plan. We were able to see what that distribution looks like. The cost of heating with wood is fairly high.
Yeah.
We have seen that. There's been research from NAU. There's a research.
It's included, isn't it?
What's
I
that?
thought we included that.
I think it's above the number.
Yeah, or it's that second.
Yeah, so, an estimated 90% of households in Hopi tribal and Western Navajo agencies rely on firewood for home heating with an estimated annual cost of almost $2,500 for heating with wood. So, and that is, information that's coming out of, NAU's Wood for Life program from the Ecological Restoration Institute. They've got something online about that. So that was, something that was you know, that's a real burden for people combined with transportation costs. Just thinking about what that means. We talked about electric vehicle infrastructure. Electric vehicles, their registrations are increasing. They're still not a huge percentage of the overall fleet, but the registrations are increasing. We have a note to self. We wanted to add more information about the lack of energy infrastructure in rural areas because, you know, that does obviously impact somebody's ability to charge electric vehicle if you don't have it. So, the county has installed 4 EV charging stations throughout the county. But in addition, ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation, is installing charging stations at select locations along the major routes. And here's that current map that shows the planned the planned routes where they want to put in charging stations throughout the states. That's an ADOT program where they're looking at the needs of electric EV charging locations. Now, this doesn't take into account private businesses who are also putting in charging stations. So this is just the ADOT plan. We don't really have that information, I don't think, as far as, you know, all the different businesses. I know Line Firearms, for instance, they've got an electric vehicle charging station, you know, gas stations will have them.
You can find the current ones through like PlugShare and the charge point app, but
It depends on your vehicle, right?
yeah, it'll tell you like the type of plug and all of that, but it doesn't tell you like what's coming down the pike.
So we recognize, I mean, obviously ADOT is doing this on their own, but we recognize that that's something that's evolving in the county as a need, as the people, more and more people are going to electric vehicles. And the last section, we do talk about waste. You know, the county is not a waste management provider. We don't collect trash. There's one landfill and it's run by the city of Flagstaff. There's one transfer station in the county. It's an issue. We heard this in our focus groups. We heard this in the outreach that people don't have a place to take their trash. If you're out in White Sage, you know, you can hire a private company. You can, you know, pay to have collection. But we know that it's an issue, and honestly, there's not a lot the county, you know, can do to provide waste collection services. We're recognizing it as an issue, and it does affect sustainable living because I know, I mean, just even getting people to recycle at the county fair is a huge effort that Marty has just initiated. You know, when you think about waste and then also think about recycling at a county level, it's definitely something that there are no easy answers.
And in months, they took away the recycling because it was so contaminated from the books there. And so, like the hauler decided, no more recycling.
So, it's something we recognize, it's something that came up. There are some, you know, people can bring their waste to the one Miller Springs transfer station, they can bring it to town, they can hire, if there's a service available, hire waste management, if they're providing service.
And Willard is just green.
Yes, just green.
Just
And green waste, yeah, so.
Yeah, we're finding a lot more, I mean, refrigerators, couches, everything down 700 feet. People are just dropping
Dropping
because
them,
they
yeah.
don't realize that Willard changed. And so they just drive to the next exit and drive out the road.
Well, and we know it's an issue, it's gonna be something to continue to work on.
Well, let's see, a question. 20 years ago, I started dictating where they all were. There were these transfer stations everywhere in rural county. And I'm just back to efficiency, somebody get in their car and drive an hour and a half to drop the trash. Well, hire Waste Management, these other companies come and pick you up. Well, they kind of got you, but I don't know if it's Waste Management, but I call them mafia. And they come and say, they're gonna charge you, and I have to pay a lot of Waste Management. And that's gonna continue to pay it. The average guy was gonna do, when he just gets, and he said, no, I'll just drive it in. There's less efficiency, one like cars are burning so much fuel. I mean, versus a place close at hand, you dump it in there, there's a degree of efficiency. The one compactor sites would get picked up and hauled off. I know at the time the county, when they abandoned it, the economy was tanking in the 90s. And so they just said they couldn't afford it, so they just randomly started knocking Well, they thought it out, which ones we had first, and it just went down the line to the point they had none. I don't know, maybe that's something the county needs to bring back to make it more sustainable versus if everybody's in their car taking their trash, and that is, we all know that isn't workable. And in the rural area, there's a long ways to
It
any
is.
dump station.
Well, I do want to point out when we get to the goals and policies, there is an idea to, and speak to this, Marty, I think we put this idea in our, a future sustainability plan to institute a waste management program. To hire a specialist, because that is something it is, and we'll talk about this in a second in terms of the goals and policies. There's an idea to put together that type of program again.
They're close to Bitter Springs, they used to be one of the side that's
Yeah.
used all the time.
Yeah,
That's
so,
gone, and then
yeah.
it turned into a burning place because people thought it was there and they would promote it, so they set a match to it.
well, it's a real need, and there is an idea about, a future program to address it. So that's the end of the topics that we covered in this chapter. Again, energy is required, the rest of it is something that has got a very strong, presence in the county as far as sustainability. And then we start into the goals and policies. And I did want to mention one thing. So when this chapter was being developed, our sustainability team got really creative, and they started developing some very detailed ideas about what eventually might become the framework for a county sustainability plan. So those have been moved to what we're calling an appendix, because otherwise this would have been another 10 or 12 pages. Very detailed program, but we realized that, and you'll see here, implementation strategy that says develop a countywide sustainability and resiliency plan. We don't have one now, but we've started a framework for creating one and what that could look like. So I didn't send that to you yet. It's long, it's very detailed, but we thought that by at least proposing that as an action item, that could get a lot of traction going forward and really creating a robust and an effective program for, addressing a lot of things. So I just kind of wanted to point that out before we start with these. Now, we are working with our kind of original scoping goal of reducing the number of goals and policies to a more manageable level than what we have now. We've got over 66 goals and over 300 policies in our current plan. So we're really trying to streamline, clarify, and be really succinct and concise with these. And so that's why there is, like I said before, a little bit of a description on these. So I'm just I didn't think we wanted to go through these one by one, unless you all want to, because we have the other chapter to get to as well, the water chapter. But we can go through these, or if you all have looked at them and have specific questions, comments, edits, we can do it back into it.
Well, I looked at them, there's so many great ideas here. Thrilled, totally thrilled. So many frustrating interactions with the board of supervisors, among others, that there isn't currently a sustainability plan. So I would love to see that. I love to see these references to it. One general thing I would say is that you could keep it up by saying something like, not just develop a countywide sustainability plan, but with specific targets and timelines for, subject action. The only other general comment, to me, it seems premature maybe to look at all of these in detail, but maybe other people are readier to tackle the specifics. The only other general point I would make is that I wonder if you want to, or you feel it's premature to build in references to the regional plan, because I know they're ahead of us timelines in developing chapters and goals and policies around some of these topics. So I didn't know if you have a general approach in mind for referencing and integrating with the Flagstaff regional plan.
Well, explain more about that because we're, this plan obviously takes in the entire county.
Right.
And the regional plan currently under development does reference specific goals and policies that are, a lot of them apply to both city and county within the region. Some of them are county and they're city only. So, in the introduction, we'll reference the region plan because it's adopted as an amendment to this plan. So if you think of it that way, it's going to be referenced as an amendment to this plan that we, just like an area plan is. So in other words, when we look at projects, we look at both. When we look at projects that are within the region, we'll look at both this plan and the regional plan simultaneously. Yeah. So to repeat or to, repeat what they have in the regional plan does seem a bit redundant. But, if you see specifically where you want that inserted, let's talk about that. I think this is a good time, we have a fairly ambitious timeline for you all to review this, but we'll tailor it to what you need.
What's that? That word sustainability, I just love that word. It's a nice word. But when I see it as its application, and I bring up City of Flagstaff, I think Flagstaff is probably one of the least sustainable communities around. I'll explain why. We must export our children. And I have one son. He's here, he's fortunate to be able to have a job here, to do what he wants to do, and have a future of success. But I see a lot of my friends, that is not really in the cards. They have to export their kids somewhere else. And you hear the discussion in coffee or my wine group, and they talk about that. And it's kind of like, nobody cares. And I said, nobody cares. We care. The word doesn't include how do we deal with our people? You just send them away, or they send them off to college. Know when you send them off to college, they're not coming back. Because there's no possibilities here. And I use the word possibilities and had a lot of discussion with Billy about like we call it affordable housing, workforce housing. I did a lot in Sedona. I mean, bad mouth somebody, but it kind of shows that we want to talk about it, but we don't want to solve it. And a rich guy basically figured this out. So he paid me to figure something out for Sedona 15 years ago. And staff loved it. When it got to the council and planning and zoning, you were down on another matter. They don't want it. You were there at hearings and you hear people say this and they say it, and let me tell you, another person gets up and repeats it and repeats it. We don't want those people living here. They should live in Cottonwood. And I saw that in 3 tweets. I'm embarrassed. I'm like, these people stand up, otherwise articulate, and they say it in an open forum. And then eventually, I think by the 4th time, at least one of the council people spoke up and said, no, that's a problem we have here. They aren't our problem. And I see that, quote, sustainable. It's like, Sedona's not a community. They talk about it that way. It's a resort. And that's all it is. And it's transient. And it will be that. That's what we said, right? But I say the sustainability, how do we deal with non-experiential? It's not going to apply to me. My kid's not going to do it. Talking to some friends, they're dealing with grandkids out. We're going to make sure our grandkids can stay here. Housing's the biggest item. And we all know that. It's no secret. And we want to deal with the words and how to describe it, everything else. But I know it's embarrassing to say $1 million homes in Flagstaff are scarce. The Verde Valley Study on Housing years ago, I thought was the best I've ever seen. They come in with $1 million houses, there's a shortage. $1 million homes, well, I don't care about them, they can do what they want. But what they do is they then buy the $700,000 house. And then what happens is the $700,000, there's no housing, people can afford $700,000, you drop down to $500,000. By the time you get down to $350,000 to $250,000, they're all gone. That group is completely out. Oh, well, now let's get some government housing and we can do this. We can buy Prudential, and come in and build these high rises and stack people in. That's not what we're intending to do. I don't think anybody here is intending to do that. But we know we got to deal with people that work here they work hard, they pay their taxes, they should have a place to live. And we can't say they can't live next to me because I don't like them.
Yeah.
That's not a community. Community has all of us next to each other. We all work together. We all look at each other. Somebody smiles and gives me a cup of coffee. What does that smile with? We're alive, right? Or you're isolated, getting grumpy and just getting angry. And that's what I bring on sustainability. You guys work on that, but how do you deal with the human component? Because we all know we export our children, and that has never been done. How do we avoid exporting children? A big item, I'll be honest with you, has to do with the development of any, we call it manufacturing or industrial base in rural areas. The tables that the feds give us aren't good on what's tolerable. I don't want to get too much into that detail because I represent clients. And it just, the rural areas not where you're going to see the job growth because their requirements for making sure we don't impact the environment is very much higher. Nobody cares what it is.
So when we talk about affordable housing chapter, you have some segment.
Anyway, I just hit that on sustainability because we all know Flagstaff exports their kids. We do not keep them here. And that is to me, I'll be honest with you, what's that? Number one. That's number one. Yeah, no one says they want to have their kid move to LA and live in LA. And even, you see what happens in the reservation. You have them up there and so what's about the county? Oh, well, we don't care. So where do they go? They go to school and next thing, boom, they're gone. And you may see them twice a year, right? And then you say, well, that doesn't seem right. Why can't they stay here? And we need to send them somewhere else. Nobody discusses the human element of exporting children. They grow up and you just send them off. And that's a pet peeve of mine. I'm lucky with my kid. I'm lucky. You know, he's here, he's doing his job, he's doing everything, he loves it. If I told him he had to go live in LA, he'd say, well, Dad, we would never want to leave. But he has the opportunities here. Our friends, we see that, they don't. They're all getting exported. And we talk, they hear it every day. You hear that. I sure wish I could get them back. How do I get them back? There just aren't the opportunities here.
But the other thing, in the case of Native Americans, it's a generational thing at this point.
Yeah.
Where our parents, our grandparents were shipped off to Oregon forcibly.
Yeah.
And so some of them embrace that lifestyle away from the reservation.
Yeah.
So just like we're trying to sustain our culture, our language in that manner, we're having that struggle of teaching our kids to come back and be accepted because those urban natives come back and they get scrutinized for the way they're living. And then vice versa.
Yeah, they go back.
And then we come back. Yeah. So then it's like, well, I have no place here. I have no home here. Land is an issue to come about to get a home. And it's like, it's easier just to go and pay $10,000 for a piece of land over and build my own house.
Yeah.
And so they never return back to the reservation. And then we wonder why there's decline in all these cultures, religion and language and so forth that make us who we are.
I think the human element needs to be part of our children. I use that word children. Children need part of sustainability. The definition needs to include what's happening to our children. What opportunities are presented for our children. I'm concerned about the environment. I don't like to smoke. When they're talking about wood, we have wood in the forest going to go burn it. Why can't you just cut up the wood so people can go pick it up and haul it to their house? I had no idea that 17% of the county burns wood. I had no idea.
Here's the funny thing is, when I was working for Red Feather Development, we were subsidized through APS to put in what they were calling the heat packs nuisance. So these people have these $6,000 units in their homes. And just like you were talking about earlier, oh, it's so hot. So they crank their temp thermostat down to 65. And then the utility bill goes up. And then the same thing in the wintertime. They crank it up to 83 degrees and then their utility bill goes up. It was to the extreme on both ends. And what we realized is that these 6,000 units are now just wall ornaments on these people's homes because of that. And yet this funding that came in subsidized through EPS and other grant funding at the federal level is just pretty much a wall ornament because they don't want to use it because of the extent of extra cost that they're accumulating. But there's no balance And what we kept trying to work on was the educational component of it. Just find a balance where you don't have to get a blanket or you don't have to take all your clothes off.
Yeah.
Something like that, find a balance where you can set that thermostat so it's not running too high or too low. And so you have these $6,000 units now that are just sitting on the wall because there's a heater for this extra cost that's gonna come in.
Would it be all right if we just took a break for 5 minutes?
That's a good idea, it is.
And then come back and then go over.
But Billy, I'm gonna say something after, when we come back,
Or would you like to do it now? I was just thinking it was just a perfect time.
Okay, let me just say that.
Yes.
You talk about the natural resources of Yavapai, whatever cannabis, Coconino County. We're not using them. We're not logging them, we're not mining them, we're not grazing, we're not using those. So I think the county needs some sustainability. We've got to use those things in some way. Some people, our ranch, right now, we're struggling with what the next generation, everybody's gone. They don't want to stay there.
Yeah.
Well, we know what the next thing will be. And we've got, I just see the natural resources start there and get out of the way and let people just have it, make it their business. The Forest Service right now has come in on us, cut all this stuff for wood for life. Oh my God, it's a mess out of it.
Oh.
And people have to drive 18 miles to come get their wood to put in their house. It's ridiculous. When we could be doing a lot of different things. And we're just wasting our natural resources. We're not taking care of soil health, we're not getting water in the ground. We're burning all our trees. We don't mine anything because that's nasty. And we don't waste anything. So I really want it back to the land, get that going, so maybe we can keep our young people involved in something, not just medical and let's get back to the basics. So, and that's it.
Well, look, let's see.
That
Yes,
seems like
I
a
agree.
great way
Yeah.
to build on what Mike said.
Yeah.
And in your goals and policies, not just for the waste reduction and
Yeah.
maybe start doing recycling-based businesses in town, but other resource-based or sustainability focused, I guess I'm getting tired. Business opportunities, work with the economic development powers that be in the county and the city to emphasize the development of businesses that will employ people into the future, as well as contribute to these values that this chapter talks about.
Can I just give you a little preview on that? Because we are working on we're calling it Resilient Economies and Housing chapter. And that is something that we're talking about. It's not ready yet. But that's definitely something that being looked at for those goals and policies. Because that is something, using our existing resources to create local jobs so people can stay here, live and work and not have to leave. Yeah, that's a really excellent point. Do you want to take it right now?
So we'd like maybe just a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 5 minutes then?
6:09.
That's your line.
No fast.
Yes, those wall systems, so was it just the way they weren't sure how to use it? Or was it, was it just bring them up the temperature to an outside temperature? So when you did something to that, and we're in education, we know to be
About visitors and second home.
Spreading the word.
I do. Oh, yes.
Copies, yeah. Can I email that? Okay.
Or at least that was what I.
Do you want me to expand it?
Yeah.
Well, I can take if you want to. It was that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's mostly. But there are areas where you can find some water with that. It's hard to tell if something happens.
Everything's perfect.
There's more.
Yeah.
You only see it.
Yeah, we have a big presentation for SCA. Yeah, the actuary.
Next door neighbor. And they now have stuff stacked like between the sidewalk and the street. I mean, it's not that big a deal, but there's like material. They might have some.
Just regular for.
Yeah. Yeah, you can put each other, we'll figure it out. That's a typical planner. You can't show up.
Ready to go.
Right, okay. So we're ready to start again, guys. We did, let's walk it out. All right, so, we're at the goals and policies now for sustainability. And, can everybody hear us online or is it? Mike, if we could, get it off again. Sorry. Yeah, so, I just want to point out that in the goals and policy section, we have, I believe, 4 goals and 20 policies. Again, we were thinking, 5 goals and 20 policies. So that's a reduction of the number of policies that are in the current just sustainability chapter, but this has the addition of energy to it. So, we can go through these, or if you have looked them over, which, we hope that you've looked them over, and if you've got any specific questions or comments, because this is really where the heart of the document, the goals and policies, businesses and the implementation strategies. Because this is what gets looked at in project decisions. So, the first set of goals are about the county demonstrating sustainable practices as an organization. So these are about the county as an organization and incorporate sustainability practices and policies within county departments. A lot of this then refers to updating the county's facilities master plan, and then also creating that separate and new county-wide sustainability plan, which we don't have right now. So, these again are written to be pretty succinct. Not every policy has a description, but we have a lot of implementation ideas that go along with these. So I can just scroll through these, and then if anyone wants to stop at one, let me know. Is that a good approach, or how would you all like to do this? Because we do need to get to the water resources chapter.
That's good. We're good.
We're good with scrolling through, okay. The second goal is a county that mitigates and is resilient and adaptive to climate change. And then you can see policies that are related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, building climate resilience, and then again, we're referring to a countywide sustainability resiliency plan. The city has got carbon neutrality plan, they've got plans that they are working to implement. The county will be developing county-specific and county-appropriate plans. It's gonna look different than what the city has. County is just different. Just again, looking at those charts and seeing transportation use, transportation emissions from transportation, that's something that is much larger than just the population. We touched on sustainable water use throughout the county, and again, there are a lot of ideas, really specific ideas in the sustainability resiliency plan for water efficiency, water efficient fixtures, that kind of thing. So that's why it's in a separate document, which we'll send to you. Identify and promote carbon sequestration and carbon offset opportunities. This is a new and evolving field that there are probably going to be a lot of opportunities for this, but again, instead of getting extremely detailed in the plan, we have that in a separate. And implement environmental justice and equity strategies in all decision making. So, this is important to recognize because environmental justice is a topic that is something that is not always recognized in decision making, where different communities who are not connected to electricity have an unfair burden. They're burning wood, having to drive long distances to collect wood, just for an example. That's an environmental justice and equity issue. So again, this points to a sustainability plan that can start to maybe come up with creative ideas to have wood drop-off locations, to have the Forest Service create collection sites. Things like this that are evolving ideas. We're not going to finalize it with the comprehensive plan. It can be finalized. It will be a work project, a work plan item, if that makes sense. Goal 3, reduce consumption of non-renewable energy. A lot of this is about energy efficiency and incentives. And pointing people to programs where they can trade in efficient appliances, that sort of thing. And then we've got encourage alternative fuel, multimodal, and micromodal transportation. You'll see this topic repeated in policies and land use and transportation, but it's also related to sustainability. When you think of micromodal transportation, in communities where people can move around on things like bicycles, electric bicycles, not just vehicles, but the hoverboards, there are a lot of down on NAU campus. The students are using all different types of micro transportation options. We want to build those into county-wide communities. You need the infrastructure to do that. So there are going to be opportunities. It's not just charging stations. It's really the whole package. When you think about transportation county-wide, we need these pickup zones for park and ride. We need all these different kinds of options to really make it work. And part of this is education. Like Aaron was talking about, how do we educate these remote county communities about what options are available to them? So we do have some ideas for kind of putting together communication networks for getting and different types of information out to communities. Encourage installation of distributed renewable energy systems. These are the small systems on either somebody's individual house or like a community-based renewable system. So we want to continue. This is where we get to this is the policy that supports that supports a requirement by ARS that we incentivize renewable energy. So a lot of this is about outreach, different types of communities that the county could join in terms of getting programs out, finding funding for people to do those smaller scale, locally based renewable energy projects where they would stay with an individual's house from local community. Another equity policy ensure that all segments of Coconino County have access to reliable, adequate, safe energy supply. A lot of these are about lobbying for different programs. We're gonna be working with government affairs on the reality of if these types of lobbying efforts can actually occur. So here's some ideas, to lobby with the state of Arizona, to lobby with the Corporation Commission. Because, I think back to Laura's point, there are some regulatory pieces, for sustainability that we maybe haven't identified that we're just limiting the county's ability to really implement energy programs. Goal 4 is about, food security and access throughout the county. Recognizing that eating local healthy food is important, but people need access to that. Whether it's, hunting or community gardens or local feed production, what have you. So again, this is something that a countywide sustainability plan can address. We want to support small-scale agriculture and ranching projects. This is,
I
yeah.
have a question,
Yeah.
that small scale. I'm looking at, people have different things with small scale, 10-acre hydroponic facility. Do we think that's small scale or do we think it's large scale?
Don't have the water.
It's hydroponics, they're low water utilities.
You don't have.
Yeah, we should define.
We should define small. Yeah, I think that you're right. We should probably get a more clear definition of small scale.
Versus the garden behind someone's house.
Yeah. And then develop policies and programs and help alleviate food deserts. Is there one of our committee members trying to talk? Yeah. Okay, if you're a member of the public, we'll have an opportunity to public comment in a little bit. So we do want to recognize that policy and programs is help alleviate food deserts. And, in implementation, we can look at the zoning code, we can look at, ways to do easier permitting, land use policies and incentives to encourage grocery stores, for instance, there might be some opportunity there, to make it just more affordable. Goal 5 would be reduce waste, increase recycling. Excuse me a second. And then reduce waste, increase recycling, and improve waste management in the county. This is where we're recognizing that in that sustainability and resiliency plan, there was a section in there that talked about getting a waste management specialist for the county position to try to tackle this issue. We want to support residential and commercial recycling and composting businesses. We know there's some businesses that are out there trying to do this. But developing it on a countywide scale would be something that could be really beneficial. And then finally, continue to engage in the brownfields programs that we've been working. They're grant programs that the county has been participating in for several years now. That can help different property owners mitigate and discover when they've got some problems, some issues with hazardous materials on site. Does anybody have any specific comments, questions, thoughts about any of the long-term policies?
Yeah, any brownfield programs in the county.
Yeah, so right now, Northern Arizona Council of Governments has been awarded. Well, so there is a grant program available. It's an EPA grant that's awarded to NACOG, and the county's been helping with, promoting that grant because it's free to business owners and property owners that qualify, where they can have an assessment done of their property. They'll evaluate whether you've got lead-based paint, asbestos, mold. So there's money available for people. It's a great program, can help business owners understand what they have, and then there can be follow-up money for remediation would qualify. So that's definitely something that we want to continue to promote. It's been, you know, a little bit of a challenge getting the word out because people think EPA grant means a negative thing, but this is actually a really beneficial program.
We have a question.
Do you have a question, Diana? So that was it for the sustainability chapter.
Is everybody on the phone? I suppose if you have your, if you need to, want to ask a question before we move on? Anybody that's on the call? Okay. Super. All right.
Do you want to switch over then to the water resources chapter? Okay, so again, the first page looks the same because these are the themes that we came up with, and in terms of this section of the plan, stewards of the national environment, sustainability, the values and revisions, you know, are the same. But then the water resources chapter does start out with an introduction. This is a state mandated section for the county, and what the state mandate requires are make this bigger. Is that big enough? Requires that we address the known legally and available surface water, groundwater, and effluent, that we estimate the demand for water based on future growth projections, and then to find out or to determine how the demand for water will be served. And I just want to mention Katie Geyer is our hydrologist. She's back here. So she worked with Nina and I on this chapter. So the current plan, our current Coconino County plan does not have a county-specific projection. So we worked with the Coconino Plateau Water Advisory Council and partnership to use their data to put together new information for this update to the plan. So there's some new information for this version that we haven't had before. During the outreach, you know, water access and availability is obviously clearly a big topic for our communities. So that is addressed here as one of the top values that we heard. So there are some specific issues related to water resources, and that is how water is managed and how it's regulated in Arizona affects how we can do that here in the county. The county is not a water provider. The county itself is never going to be a water provider. There are small community water systems within the county, but the rules that govern water in Arizona are complex. I'm not a water expert, and you know, it takes a lot of background to really understand it. We try to outline as best we could at this level how these rules apply to the county. There's a lot of uncertainty about our water supply. We know a lot of our water comes from groundwater. There is just not a, at least available to us right now, a clear picture of how much there is and how long it's going to last, just to simplify it. Climate change is going to impact water supply. We know that. And, you know, we're also, part of this plan is how do we create that sustainable water future? So I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on the regulatory framework. It is the county's ability to regulate water is determined by the state of Arizona right now. And so, for instance, I just want to summarize during project review, if we have a new subdivision, if we have a new development project, the county is not permitted by statute to use water as a reason to deny a project. So just to make it really clear, that's a very simplified version of the water regulations. The county does not, we're not in what's called an active management area. We haven't adopted any of the other forms of regulatory authority that could be adopted. It's a deep dive. We could spend an entire meeting on just regulations. So there's information in the plan. And that's covered very briefly by both ADWR, Arizona Department of Water Resources, and APQ, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. They regulate the wells, well registry. So those two state agencies together pretty much, guide the regulatory framework for water supply in the county. There's a little bit of information in this chapter on regulatory environment. There's a lot more where we put together another appendix that has a lot more detail on the regulations. If somebody wants to read it and get very much into those details. There's a section here on water rights for the tribal governments. As we know, our indigenous nations tribal lands comprise 38% of the county's overall land mass. And they maintain independent water systems. And there's a discussion in here on some very recent legislation that is moving to Congress, which would give the tribes greater access and greater authority over their own water rights. It's not resolved yet, but we recognize that in this chapter.
But there has been agreement between all the different entities, which is.
There's agreement in Arizona, and that was huge apparently. And I'll just, what it is called. So it is, so in July of 2024, leaders of 3 northern Arizona tribes, Navajo, Hopi, and San Juan Southern Paiute, advocated to Congress for passage of the Northeastern Arizona Indian Water Rights Settlement Act of 2024. And there are 17 participants, including those tribes, state of Arizona. And if this is passed, it would allow for reliable and safe source of water for those communities and would settle ongoing water claims in the Colorado Basin. So it's complex. We're not going to repeat it here, but we want to recognize that in this document. And by the time this is printed, I imagine there'll be some resolution on what's happening at the congressional level. So there's a section on recent and future regulatory initiatives and opportunities. We want to really recognize that the Coconino Plateau Watershed Partnership and Watershed Advisory Council, they are a tremendous partner to Coconino County. We could not do this without them. They are a 501c3. They were formed in partnership with Coconino County and Forest Service and City of Flagstaff and other agencies. Their planning area goes beyond Coconino County. It's a watershed-based planning agency or groundwater basin, I believe. And so, but we could not have done this without them because they collect their own data, they get grants. We just really need to recognize very strongly the partnership that we have with them. We want to recognize too that the Governor's Water Policy Council that was established in 2023 was specifically to modernize Arizona's Groundwater Management Act and all the regulations that were in line with that. They are currently working on new proposals to establish a rural groundwater management act that is a framework for new legislation. Again, this is something we're not going to get into a lot of detail in this plan, but we want to recognize that that's an opportunity that may come forward. So then getting into what we do know at the county level, based on the data that we got from the Coconino Plateau Water Rights Council and Partnership, we did get data from them about water supply sources in the county. And this is an estimate, if you can see it, about 65% of the water in Coconino County is from groundwater. Our water use comes from groundwater. That's probably not a surprise. But then we also see that 13% is reclaimed water. Now this includes all the water users in the county, including the city, Flagstaff, the municipal users as well as the rural users. And then 22% of water comes from surface water. So we talk about that. We talk more about groundwater and we get some definitions in here about, the different groundwater sources. So we have layers of aquifers. That is, our groundwater is essentially quite deep. And that's what this section describes, the different aquifer layers. And it really recognizes what a challenge it is to develop these in the county. And Nina, jump in, and Katie, jump in at any time if I'm not. I know I'm glossing over this, but there's a lot of information here. In addition to groundwater, there are the encouraged water bearing zone, which are below the surface of the groundwater, but they're closer to the surface. And they're affected by seasonal fluctuations in rainfall and snowmelt. And they're also more susceptible to contamination, so we recognize that. There are some interesting tools now available. People want to look at the index level wells, can go on and look at that from ADWR. And then we talk about surface water. So surface water is just what you think, it's streams flowing on top of the earth. And, and also reservoirs. So there are different sources of surface water. We talk a bit about the quality of surface water, which is monitored by ADQ. And then reclaimed water or treated effluent. There are some places, Page, City, Flagstaff are putting the reclaimed water back into the systems. They're treating it, and right now a lot of it is either reused on golf courses or it's in snow, or is being the excess is actually being discharged and it's providing habitat in some of our wildland areas. So there are impacts on water quality, point and non-point source pollution. We talk about discharges directly into the system and then runoff and things like that. I think non-point source pollution, watershed health, and forest restoration is a component of water quality. And then we talk about water users and providers, and this is where we were able to develop some new information for the plan, including this map, which is not showing up very well on the screen like this, but the blue areas are showing the locations of community water system providers. So when you look at the entire county, there are a lot of water providers around the people to just tap into. People don't have lines going to their homes that they can just turn on a tap and water's coming from their provider. City of Page is one. There's a small one in Fredonia. City of Flagstaff, Donny Park, out of Williams. So you can see just the distribution and the spread of the water systems. And then in an appendix, we have a list of what all of those are. Obviously, people are also, they have access to wells or they're hauling water. So these are sources of water for people in the county. A lot of people in the county haul water. There's just not access to a well, so they have to go to what's called a standpipe, fill up a big tank that's on their truck and take it to their home. We talk about water demand and future supply. And what we wanted to show you is this chart, because this is, I'm going to minimize this. These columns are tied into what was called groundwater basins. And the map that we showed earlier is also delineated by groundwater basin. And these groundwater basins come from Arizona Department of Water Resources delineation of what those are. And so we were able to, again, using several different data sources to understand what the estimated demand for water was in the Coconino Plateau groundwater basin, and then projecting that out based on population growth, what it would be in 2045. So you can see overall, and the total column is over on the far right, that demand for water will go up. It's about by 10%, and that tracks with our population growth. So, and this is by acre feet per year.
And it'd be good to point out that the groundwater basins, like part of the reason we did our data this way is because ADWR is embarking on a planning effort, what you call it, and they are working in different regions of the state, and they'll be mapping out, planning for water.
So they've also, ADWR has been mandated by the state to do a similar planning exercise for different areas. They're starting down in the southern part of the state. I believe there's, in 2025, they're planning to come up to this part and do their analysis for northern counties. But for this effort, we wanted to go ahead and provide a picture of what water use and demand looks like in the county.
Kevin, citizen, pardon me.
Go ahead.
I might not understand this, but anyway, it may have a ripple effect for other conversations we're gonna be having. Is this graph suggesting that in 20 years, we're gonna have a 10% increase in water usage in 20 years into the future?
Yes, and we did it based on population growth. We didn't have any other tools for determining the increase in water usage, and so we did it based on population growth. So, census data shows, isn't that where we got the 10%?
Well, it's actually the state, Office of Economic Opportunity issue the official population projections for the county. And they're showing an overall 10% increase in population growth to 2045. So we use their projections, which are the official state projections.
Okay, so my question is about how overwhelmingly important the Little Colorado River Basin is here. And to me, that seems surprising that so much more water coming out of that basin and out of the Coconino Plateau Basin, which is where Donny Park water and City of Flagstaff, groundwater wells and so forth are.
Can you
So
see this?
What's going on in there? Is it agriculture? Is it?
Well, can you see this map up here? So this
Yeah,
is,
I see it. It's a huge percentage of the county, but to me, it doesn't seem like.
it does include Flagstaff, it does include Donny Park, so it includes the main, it's hard to see, maybe the
Oh.
boundaries, so. Because the colors are not as vibrant,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So I couldn't find it black and white, so that's why I can't tell.
Okay, so the boundary goes like
Because
this.
Stony Park water, I know they say comes out of the Coconino Plateau aquifer. But that basin is also drawing out of the same.
Maybe Katie can explain the difference between the aquifers and the basins.
So basins aren't delineated to the aquifers, they're
Okay.
regional aquifers are a lot larger, so they span basins.
Okay.
So the Coconino and the well, the RM aquifer, you can tap into them from, I want to say all of the majority of the county.
So the basins are the surface water that.
It's really good, it cuts across watersheds, it's something that ADWR has used to model and collect data, but it's not an exact science. To say it's a watershed or it's an aquifer.
Okay.
It was the best information we had for, to use the ADWR delineated groundwater basin geography. So and that's what these maps show, and there are different colors.
That was my mistake.
But you're right, the Little Colorado, the River Plateau groundwater basin does include the major population centers, and that's why you'll see that chart that way.
Thank you.
And I have we do have some color copies.
No, I could have read it online in color.
So there's that, and then, in terms of future supply, we did, pretty much bullet points, some key points that we learned, that the C and the RM aquifers are the main source of water in Coconino County, getting back to the question about aquifers. They're deep and the recharge rates vary greatly. We're not 100% sure about how fast they recharge. The water they contain is old, we know that. The wells that access water from perched aquifers may be impacted more by drought. The extent of and quantity or amount of current groundwater supplies and the rate of depletion is not well understood. At least by us, we're not a water provider, we don't have a water department to provide this. We don't know exactly how long the supply of groundwater will last. It's not, we know there's a fair amount down there, but we can't say exactly how long it will last. Local impact of withdrawal is better understood and seen as, when we see local springs dry up and that sort of impact. And then to extend the life of groundwater supply, multiple approaches are needed, including conservation, use of alternative water sources, and regulatory changes. So that's the text. And then, and we also understand that we need partnerships. The county will need to be in partnership with a lot of other agencies in order to really understand and chart down water supply and demand going into the future. So then we have the goals and policies for water. First one, again, talks about sustainable water supply and protects the natural environment and ecological systems for future generations. Because we know that impacting the natural environment with, for instance, dryness springs is a concern, and this is trying to address that. Do you want to go through again the major goals, and then if anyone has a specific comment on one of the policies, we can stop talking about that.
Yeah, I think that would be true, we can do like we did last time. Yes, something about right now.
You'll see some notations. We took a lot of the existing policies and there was redundancy, combine them and then, describe them again in terms of what that policy expanded the meaning of policy. A lot of the implementation strategies talk about partnerships with the Coconino Plateau Water Advisory Partnership. And one of the ideas is to work with them to develop a water resource management plan specific to Coconino County. County can't do this on our own, but it's an idea for the future that really could then help us stay on top of this issue, more than just a 10-year update to the conference. Goal 2, sustainable management practices and new technologies are implemented to preserve and protect water supplies and improve the quality of surface water and groundwater. Goal 3, access to information about water supply and security and new emerging water conservation technology is equitably available to all residents, water providers, and water districts. We know that one of the issues with potentially climate change and access to water is if there's ever a possibility of, for instance, a well drying up that people rely on to get water. We want to have channels that people can access to know where they can go to get water, because that has happened in other places in Arizona. But if there's at least a way to start communicating with rural communities about how to find water in times of emergencies, that would be something that would be helpful. There's a goal, and this is a current goal that we modified to reduce water demand and promote water conservation practices by implementing new technologies, information, and new methods and to reuse water. There's new technologies evolving all the time about how to collect water, how to harvest rainwater, how to reuse that in building codes and things like that. So we want to recognize that. And then that was it. So we have 4 goals and 12 policies. You guys need a moment to think about these?
I guess the only question that I would have is sharing of data with tribal nations. And let's just mention that there's crossover on the different aquifers and basins and so forth, and how that's impacting the region, so to speak, with the tribal nations having their own water systems or overseeing their own water systems, and where their water's coming from and how that's impacting the region. It's a question on how we're sharing data to work with one another to, I guess, going back to the sustainability component of it.
Most of the history common about places to haul water. There used to be several of them along 89, heading up to now closed off. Used to have windows that ran on the main, cowboy. It doesn't mean the water's that deep. They used to have these tanks and stuff up there. You'd see people going, pulling in there, loading up their water to go to their homes, which are nearby, versus having to come to the flag and get water or whatever else. I'm curious what's ever happened to those. Why aren't they still in operation?
I know one location where there's a fill station, but it's not monitored. So it's not up to the level, so. I guess it's hard to say whether the water is safe. Got the water's coming out, people are using it, whether it's at a level of AQ, safety standards. That's that, I don't know.
I mean, maybe that should be a mission then.
And the same thing
The
with the
county
counties.
try to be able to get these stations that are scattered in remote areas to provide potable water.
We did have in here an implementation strategy to work with, the Tokyo Plateau Water Advisory Council to identify those standpipe locations. And, yeah, that would be something that actually they thought was a good idea. They would want to get a grant to help fund that because to identify where they are and to monitor and track, what they're able to produce is something that, again, the county would need partnerships in order to make these things happen.
There's also solar pumps now that work well.
Yeah, and actually it's under, number 6, the county will coordinate with other jurisdictions to identify sources of pond water during times of drought. And actually, in partnership with the Coconino Plateau Water Partnership, initiated a project to develop a water resource plan. So this type of plan that could include a lot of different opportunities, just like that, to identify water, find standpipe water sources, really come up with a way to monitor groundwater and then probably work with KWR in their evaluation of that they'll be doing so that we can really try to get hands on water resources. And then also to look at regulatory changes because the county would have an opportunity. Becoming an active management area is one thing, but there are other opportunities to develop, to adopt different levels of regulation. But it's something that the county really needs to consider at the, high policy level, because it's so big and trying to then impose regulations on the water providers is a decision that is going to come from us, it's going to come from the supervisors. What are their options?
I think we're going to provide stations for potable water to go further north. I go in the fries, and I see the volume of bottled water, beautiful plastic bottles being purchased, fill in the back of pickups. And I see Native Americans in the pickups, and I'm doing their heads for the areas that have the water. I'm saying, I got the richest country in the world, we can't provide bottled water. That just seems to be crazy, but there used to be water along the route. And as time as I got older, they just one at a time, they just disappeared. And they used to be monitored and maintained. Back to the point, and if somebody said, well, this is a pothole, something went wrong, fix the problem or figure out how to operate it. Today's world with solar power, it's so easy to put that isolate inside. You know what I'm talking about. You grow up there, yeah, that's such. More comments, more questions?
Well, an observation, not necessarily about the goals and policies section, but overall, I thought water quality deserved more discussion in the chapter. And thinking about it relevant to the point that we're just making about the availability of standpipes and wells in tribal areas and rural areas of the county, all that work that Janet Ingram have recently done at NAU around mining-related contamination in a lot of the wells that were historically used and are still used for animal purposes and probably human consumption too. Similarly, there's reference to recharge in some of the shallower aquifers or in areas where there's a lot of fracturing of rock. And also the perched water sources that undoubtedly a lot of people's private wells are tapping into. How much attention, what is the testing framework, et cetera, around monitoring and ensuring that we don't see negative water quality impacts around, I don't know, expanded industry or any of the number of things that accidental spills along transportation routes, there's all sorts of things, but it's just overall, I thought there was room for more discussion around water quality.
Yeah, we could add a certain amount of that to the regulatory framework, because there is a regulatory framework for water quality. That does
From the ADQ.
omit wells
Right.
from that personal well, so we could certainly add that in there.
That could be why the wells are shut down. Well, like, some of the ones that you need to open them up and fix them. So I just shut them down, make some, go to the price to buy his water.
It's the community water system where there's more than 25 people getting water, which it would be.
Yeah.
Then there's the whole regulatory layer
Right.
on that, and so then they have to do testing and just, yeah, whether it's affordable at that point. I don't know if that's why they disappeared. but-
Some of those wells have disappeared. When you see the storage tanks, it looks like have somebody inside them. So I mean, there's reasons besides just some of this area. And anyway, we're well aware of that. So anyway, a lot of these wells, don't have the water quality that you hope that they would have outside of agriculture. Is there other comments here that in the interest of? I have one that might be very global, and so I don't want to really go too deep into it. One of the interesting things talking about sustainability and all the other things that are associated with these chapters is when we refer to climate change, it's really the overarching theme behind all of these topics. And yet, it's really a new paradigm. There's been a lot of connotations and perspectives associated with climate change to get us to where we are today. But what is it for the county moving forward? And so for myself and my role with what I do, is really trying to understand what is really that climate change paradigm mean? And what does it look like? Because in essence, really what it may be, at least to us at Abbott's, for example, these days, really more how to be more proactive, more flexible, potentially, more dynamic and fluid as really the way of our life, rather than a fixed set of here's how we do things and here's how it's going to be and so on and so forth. If for the county, with this innovation, with this whole plan, putting it into the future, really understand that dynamic, fluid flow as a paradigm for the plan is really important. If you're going to talk about climate change, that's really that umbrella. Other agencies, if you will watch, will refer to climate change in your special land management agency, and yet they're putting the same type of documents together that are traditional or moving forward the next 10, 20 years. Those don't work. They can't. They're by nature already stifled. So for you, maybe consider really how to understand the paradigm when you talk about climate change as a function of the umbrella for this whole plan would be super.
Do you see that, I have a quick question, do you see that then as something that needs to be somehow woven throughout the plan? Is that what you're envisioning?
I kind of do. I mean, I don't know if it's possible, with where you are with it and how you're moving forward. I think it's really important though for the county to be as really outstanding in the whole country. The United States, Coconino County just shines. And with that, you have a leadership role because of that. And in that leadership role is how can we understand a paradigm of climate change in context to what all are planning. I don't know the answer to that for you, but I'm just suggesting, we're certainly looking at that. I think any landowner that has stewardship practices on this, we're all trying to understand it. I think every tribe, every Native American is trying to understand that. how do we address that as a new paradigm for us and embrace it?
I think it's relevant for me because we're seeing it. We're actually seeing what no ratings do.
We're living it.
We're living it. Our phone only got this big and it's right. Also, no harvest, no question, nothing. So all of this, it's reflected and we're living it. We're living it now. And you're right, how do we make adaptations away from traditional living or how it's always been? Because now, in our case, some people are saying, well, we're gonna haul water. And it goes against the culture. And so now we're having to make those adjustments in modern world, if you will, and what we're living and what we're seeing as far as our agriculture is concerned. And when your culture is based on agriculture, you don't have a harvest. It really jeopardizes the whole thing, the bigger picture.
Any other thoughts? So let's just how about, we've got some public participation that we want to open up. So let me go out, we had, before we get into the public participation, I had a question, for the advisory group, about the November meeting. Let me just make this bigger. We have planned for the topics in November to be land use, growth and development, and circulation and transportation. Our public works staff is not available on the 21st, which is your regular Thursday meeting. So we're wondering if you would be open to meeting on Monday, the 25th instead. They would be here that day. So like our sustainability staff was able to come today. Would that date work for everyone? And those of you online, can you hear that? So Monday, November 25th as an alternative to. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so that works. Terrific. So we did that, and then we have public comment period.
Might you have anything?
I've got lots of questions.
And so Mike, do speak up too. So
Who can tell me how many gallons it takes to produce the food per person per day that we eat? Over 1,900 gallons per person per day. That's from a study done by the University of Oregon. Next question I have is, have you ever seen the rapid watershed assessments done by NRCS for the Cataract watershed, or the Little Colorado watershed? You might want to get those because it's very eye-opening about the water that's available out there.
correct and what else?
Going back to energy, your energy portion, we talked about the use of electricity, be it renewables or non-renewable, natural gas, propane, gasoline and whatnot. Have you ever broken it down to what the expense is for each, or what you want to use it for?
No, we didn't get into that level of detail.
No, you're talking about the cooking with gas and the heating with gas as compared to what cost they heat with electricity.
We know that one estimate on wood, you know, what the cost of heating with wood is, and that was the best study that NAU did. We haven't looked at it individually.
Okay, when it comes,
Mike,
okay,
I agree with you. With the cost of the electric, if we jump on electric, you could break, there's a cost associated with it as distinguished from natural gas. We've all seen that in housing, back even when nobody could hook up to gas and Flagstaff.
Yeah.
The electric bills were 3 times what somebody paid for gas.
yeah,
You know, ADS, this is all great, guys come here, we're the best. Okay, but it's all a matter of economics too. Somebody can't afford it, so he's got to put on 5 splitters.
and when you look at renewable energy, you know that China Norway and Sweden are getting rid of their so-called renewable energy. They're going to nuclear because they have found out they haven't got the land mass to create the electricity with the renewables that they need for power.
Yeah.
We haven't realized that yet, but quite frankly, we're in the same boat. I mean, we look at lots of renewables and yeah, I'm involved in renewables and whatnot, but there's a serious issue about how much land mass you want to take out of ag production, whatever kind of ag you want to talk about, and make it renewable solar. That takes a great deal of acreage and doesn't produce enough power over the long run. The amount of acreage you need to utilize in that to produce the power that we need. Then waste, when you're talking about waste and whatnot, I've had a great deal of experience about my neighbors giving me stuff they think I need that they don't need anymore.
Yes.
Living in Flagstaff, I can put my refrigerator on the curb and the city will haul it off and it cost me nothing. Living in the county, if I want to get rid of my refrigerator at the city landfill, I have to go pay to get the freon and the coolant removed from it. And then, of course, I have the transportation cost of getting to the city dump. And I have to have the proof that I did have the refrigerant removed from it. And the biggest problem then is that dumps in sub-county line. So your residents in the county find the closest place to get rid of it because it costs so much to go to the transfer station. To drop it off in Williams. And I can provide you, artificial Christmas trees, and I can give you computers and love seats and TVs. I've got it all. But the thing about this, that's a huge issue. You get out in the county and you look at the open space that you want to keep open. And I spend a great deal of my time picking up trash from my neighbors. So it's something that needs to be addressed. I have talked about to the board of supervisors over the years about this issue. That's just something that happened.
Thanks, Mike. Is there anybody else online who wanted to address the advisory group?
They muted because you muted them or?
They can unmute. Did you, there's a number 563-419. They're not unmuted. They can unmute that fast, but they're unmuted.
Okay, well, then, anybody have any further comments or questions for asks of any kind?
I might have.
Sure.
Being in this very southern part of Coconino County, this is all very different from where we live and how things are in Forest Lakes area. And I'm just wondering how much time and thought is put into studying a little more the southern part. You're talking mostly Flagstaff and north. Well, there's a lot of us to the south that have different needs and different ways of doing things. And I wonder if there's much study. We don't hear much from the county or know much about. We're very self-sufficient in Forest Lakes where we have created our own everything, So we take care of ourselves down there, but the lack of knowledge or seems to be something that could be.
So we did focus groups down there, and a lot of what we heard from communities below Flagstaff, if you will, the southern part, are wrapped into this overall, the visions and the values that you're seeing. And the needs and issues down in Forest Lakes, you do have some services, like you said. But so that's where we're looking countywide. If there's something that we're missing, please bring it up.
No,
Yeah.
no, not missing. We don't feel like we're missing on anything, but maybe to know that we're part of. Maybe communications a little. I'm not complaining or being negative about it. We love being in Coconino County. But because of, and we're unique in that it's more a recreational community with 1,200 homes. We're unincorporated. So therefore we had to create our own mini government in our city within ourselves.
Well, and it's interesting that you're bringing this up because we have heard this idea of community ambassadors, and we're writing this idea into a future chapter that you'll be seeing actually next month, diverse cultures and community characters. So that's an idea that came out of our focus groups to put together a program for information sharing like that. Because we've heard not just from Forest Lakes, but also up in White Sage, wanting connections with the county.
Mhm.
So we'll try to bring that more to the forefront, with the next time.
Well, one of the points I wrote about in the sustainability chapter is reference to these resilience hubs that I know the city is creating a couple of. And I think about the more rural and outlying and distant portions of the county. And what does it really take? Some emergency power availability, some emergency communications ability, et cetera. What is the minimum? And then should that somehow be explicitly addressed? And, you may have already created most of this already, but there may be other places in the county that would benefit that haven't explicitly come together.
And you're totally thinking ahead, because we're putting this into the.
But it does seem like the resilience chapter and sections are one place to make an early reference to it.
Yeah, and we need to get the appendix, the sustainability appendix to you all, because it's talked about in there.
Yeah.
More specifically. These exact words, community ambassadors, resiliency hubs.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
It's sustainability, neighborhood, networks, and then.
Yeah, thank you.
I wanted to just follow up with an ask of exam one more time, because with regard to this, you mentioned just slightly, I heard just that maybe it's not addressing agriculture as much as you were hoping it would. Is there something specific that you can think of what could make it stronger?
Well, it just seems like most of the county has something going on in it that y'all don't even know about, and all of this is social. And I think what you like about the county is working man's, where you can get out and do whatever you're gonna do, but it's not really addressing any of these things. I don't know how you do that, but I'm also on the, climate change flexibility is the only way you need to deal with. So if we can put some flexibility in here and just know it's an ongoing deal. You have to adjust to it every day, I think is important, but I don't feel like there's not much private land. Well, there is, but there isn't. Within the forest, there's not much private land yet. And it's all gonna go the way you don't want it to go. You personally are the county. More spending, more everything, and I don't think we're supporting our land-based industries. In here, I'd like to see that more.
Anybody else have anything?
Unless there's someone on the call up here, I think you're solid.
Okay,
So thank you, yes.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. May I ask just very briefly, if you wouldn't mind, just overview for the next 2 or 3 months, what we're looking forward to?
oh, in terms of chapters?
Yeah, just, I know it's all out there, but if we could just have a later, we know what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, so here it is. Again, we've got, next month, and diverse cultures, community character, and the natural environment chapter. And then in November, land use growth and development and circulation and transportation. Those are both required elements by statute. And then in December, parks, recreation, trails, parks, open space, trails, and recreation. And then a big one is community services, public safety, and partnership. This one, resilient economies and housing, we need to work on that and fit that in.
Who's
So,
writing those?
so we
John
have,
Saltonstall.
so John Saltonstall is helping us with the resilient economies and housing. We've had, actually quite a few people help us with diverse cultures, community character, mainly planning staff, and then natural environment, it's been Jessica Simmons and Jay Smith and some other people. Land use growth and development, guess what? Those big planners. Circulation, transportation, that's public works, our transportation engineers. Parks, open space, recreation, our public, or rather our parks and recreation staff are working on that. And then also community services, public safety partnerships, that includes health and human services, the sheriff's department, forest restoration, that's a big, that there's a lot of services that we'll be talking about. Fire departments, so that's kind of a big chapter. We're hoping to stick to the schedule. There's a lot to this. We don't want to drag out your time too much, but if we have to adjust, we will, if it's agreeable with you all.
So are you gonna send us a appendix X or whatever?
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, we'll send that to you.
Fair enough. Is everybody good? All right, the list was perfect. Thank you for your.
Thank you, guys. And I did want to say, so at some point, when everyone's here, we want a picture, if that's gonna be all right.